These are the 10 worst episodes of Family Guy according to IMDb, starting with Vestigial Peter, where Peter grows a twin on the side of his neck that starts to steal his thunder. Before the family heads off to church, Lois gets on Peter for wearing the same shirt every single day, even though it has a hole in it. Peter and Lois decide to hit up the mall for him to try on new outfits, but Lois's suggestions are questionable. Going with his usual look, Peter struggles to button his shirt. The salesman points out a huge lump on Peter's neck. Fearing the worst, they go to Dr. Hartman, who identifies it as a vestigial twin, an incomplete human growth feeding off Peter. Named Chip, the twin wins over the family with his upbeat personality. Though Peter enjoys having him around, Chip's positive attitude starts to exhaust Peter, spilling into his job when Chip won't stop talking and hits on Peter's boss. Peter goes to Dr. Hartman to have Chip removed, but because their internal organs are intertwined, the procedure could lead to both their deaths. Desperate, Peter agrees to the surgery. After hours, Dr. Hartman announces, "I'm afraid we lost him." "What? Oh my God. Hey guys. Oh, there he is. Geez, man, you almost gave me a heart attack." Not only does Peter get his life back, but Chip can now walk on his own. Chip redecorates the house and spends quality time with the kids. Lois notes that Chip embodies the love of life Peter had when he was younger. It seems Chip may even be replacing Peter, as he's caught singing their song without Peter. Peter takes things to the extreme by trying to have a dingo eat Chip, but it ends up attacking him instead. The two argue, agreeing their lives were better before they met. Chip storms off. Peter breaks the news to the family that Chip is gone, worrying them. While the family searches for Chip, Peter accidentally falls down the basement stairs and breaks his leg. Luckily, a returning Chip rescues him, dragging him to the hospital. Finally recognizes why Chip is so special, apologizing for hating him. The Griffins tie Chip to a balloon so he can see the world, at least until a bird or a plane hits him. Despite everyone in the show liking Chip, audiences did not, finding him annoying and boring. Overall, the episode is predictable and lacks standout moments or jokes, leading to its low rating of 5.8 on IMDb. But that isn't the only pair that end up hitting each other, as in Old West, Mayor Wild West tries to kill his estranged father despite just wanting to relax on Father's Day. Lois thinks it would be a good idea to set up a scavenger hunt for all the husbands. Settling up in a slow-moving pedal car, the gang heads towards their first clue. Their hunt takes them all over the place, from Goodwill to Ernie the Giant Chicken's mansion to Wild West Ranch, the latter of which is where they find their prize. You are now the proud sponsor of a rescue sheep on the ranch. Oh no. Happy Father's Day. The gang spots Mayor Wild West, looking ready for a duel. A farmhand explains that every year he waits for his absent father to return so he can kill him, but he never shows. Peter takes the opportunity to bother him, but as soon as Wild West turns, his father, Old West, shoots him in the shoulder. Despite shooting his son, Old West explains he's here to make amends, which Wild West rejects. "You lost the right to make amends the day you walk out on me." Old West offers the guys a ride home, and Peter lets him camp in their backyard for the night. Lois is quite charmed by him and wonders why he and his son can't make up. Old West gives the condensed version. After he and his wife had Wild, he tried to find honest work but eventually fell back on stealing like an outlaw, which Wild never forgave him for. Looking to help, Peter offers to domesticate Old West and turn him into a modern dad to win his son back. Decked out in some sick retiree clothing, Peter brings Old West to reconcile with his son. Despite just wanting to apologize, Mayor West has none of that and has his father arrested for shooting him. Feeling guilty, Peter assembles his friends to form a posse to break Old West out of prison. While on the way back to Wild West Farm, the gang is stopped by the mayor himself. Before he does, Old West decides to tell him why he really left. "If I stayed, you would have grown up to be just like your father, a lonely, loveless, no-good outlaw." Finally ready to accept his apology, Mayor Wild West shoots his dad in the leg and says he never wants to see him again, and they're both happy about it. This episode is a bore to sit through, with its uninteresting plot and focus on irrelevant side characters like Wild West. So if you're looking for more excitement, look no further than Con Air-S, an episode that saw Brian and Stewie compete for the inheritance of a wealthy old woman. One morning, while reading the paper, Stewie notices a picture of Brian standing next to an old woman. When questioned, Brian says he's simply keeping this woman company in her old age, although Stewie suspects an ulterior motive. His suspicions are further heightened when Brian returns home with a diamond-encrusted gold watch, which Brian tries to claim he's had forever. Brian attends yet another country club ball with the old woman, seemingly posing as an admiral to appear more refined. Brian lies about owning a charity, trying to save her favorite flower from going extinct, which sounds oddly familiar to what a certain count told her, the Count of Monty Hall, who is actually Stewie. Now, both living a lie, the two decide against sabotaging each other for now and instead plan to con their way through the multiple rich heiresses at the club. While attending a polo match, the duo spots the white whale of rich old women, an heiress with an annoyingly long name. Margaret Woodworth Carrington von Schumacher Chanel Astor Livingston Comtant. With her husband just barely living, Brian hopes to charm her so they can be set for life. Following her onto a riverboat cruise, Brian and Stewie swoop in when they see her husband potentially taking his final breath. To do that, Brian must pose as the one thing he hates more than anything, a cat person pretending a cat's protective lead pin on his lapel is his favorite charity. Hook, line, and sinker. They offer to find her husband for her in the locker room, and when it looks like he may be dead, they decide to take a closer look. Get the hell out of my face, Brian. What? Quagmire? No, Quagmire. It turns out Quagmire has been posing as her husband, just waiting for her to die. The three end up striking a deal, help speed up her death, and they'll all split the estate. Before any of them can make a move, she apparently dies of a heart attack in her estate. Quagmire drops by, having not really believed they had it in them to kill her, but a deal is a deal. He signs over half of the estate to Brian and Stewie, leaving them filthy rich. We're rich, Stewie, and no flip joke can take that away. While on the flip side, they learn that due to a bad amusement park, Margaret died with $18 million in debt, which now technically falls on Brian and Stewie. But at least they still have their health, unlike Margaret. But the twists aren't over yet, people. It looks like she's still alive, having faked the whole thing to escape her debt. Not only did audiences not like the generic get-rich plot, but people really hated the long-name gag that went on forever, complaining it was overplayed and felt too much like filler. It's annoying, but nothing too gross in comparison to the time Stewie is on Sot, where Stewie impregnated himself with Brian's DNA to save their friendship. Stewie tries to get Brian to go hang out with him, but he's unfortunately already made plans. He complains to Rupert that Brian has been so distant recently, wishing they could be as close as they once were. Despite his multiple efforts, Brian just seems far too busy to hang out with Stewie anymore. As he watches Brian drive away, he notices how happy Joe and Bonnie look with their baby, Susie. While wondering how they managed to be so happy, Stewie thinks he's put it together. Having a baby seems to have made them closer. Babies save relationships. To warm Brian up to the idea, Stewie holds a fake dinner that Brian won't stop texting at, and before Stewie can lay out the plan, Brian leaves for a date. Through waiting around for Brian, Stewie decides to jumpstart the process by taking a few bits of Brian's hair. Hopefully, he doesn't do any disturbing crimes of nature type things with those. The fertilization device is complete. This will impregnate me with a child that will bring Brian and me back together. Buckle up, this is going to be a weird one. By adding a bit of Brian's DNA, the machine injects him with the ability to birth life. To celebrate, Stewie presents Brian with a pregnancy test. Oh my god, that thing's positive. Is Lois pregnant again? No. After the process of elimination, Brian eventually realizes the wonderful, horrible news. Brian, we're pregnant. Oh my god, run while you still can. Brian, obviously horrified, makes it clear how against this whole idea he is, from the practicality behind it to the implication that he got it on with a baby. Brian insists that Stewie get rid of it, but he's already grown attached and is excited about the potential of it making them closer. Safe to say, none of this is making Brian feel better about it, as he decides to take matters into his own hands. Is it dead? You hit me. What kind of monster hits a pregnant toddler? Stewie threatens to kill Brian if he ever lays a finger on him again, but Brian would probably be okay with that at this point. Even though not much time has passed, Stewie's beginning to show and starts to ask for favors for Brian. Brian's clearly still not into it, but buckles a bit when Stewie expresses his pregnancy pains. My back is killing me, and I've also been experiencing a little morning sickness. Brian agrees to tag along with Stewie for some husband-and-husband activities, like getting checked up at the hospital, going shopping for baby clothes, and taking some tasteful prenatal photographs. While in line for some burgers, things really start to escalate when Stewie's water breaks. They rush to the hospital, but it looks like the baby wants to come now. Pull over. It's starting to come out of. Where? I'm not sure exactly. Before they can properly prepare, the baby shoots out, and thankfully we're spared that visual, but then another comes out, and another, and they're coming out of everywhere. Kill me, this hurts too much. Holy, Stewie has successfully given birth to 7 man-dog abominations, much to the horror of Brian. Despite the traumatic moment, Stewie sees this as a chance for Brian to redeem himself. Well, you do have a son that you were never there for. This is your opportunity to do things differently. Taking care of the kids proves to be more difficult than they imagined, as they range in health defect from blindness to no bones at all. With the babies slowly dropping like flies, Brian tries to leave for a couple of weeks to try to get his head on straight. Stewie says this goes against the whole point of this, which was bringing them closer together. Brian admits he thought Stewie needed space, and that's why he was so distant before. Me? This whole impregnating myself with my friend's child fiasco wasn't really necessary. Great. Thanks for the nightmares then. Many viewers found this episode to be shocking for no reason other than to be gross. Seeing a pregnant child did not sit right with some people who didn't see the comedy in it. This episode does have its fans, but those fans were soon lost after watching Brian infect the family with herpes in the season 12 episode Herpy, The Love Sore. The medical nightmare begins with Brian, who's lounging on the couch watching a Western. This piques Stewie's interest, though he gets grossed out when the characters cut open their hands and shake. What's Clint Eastwood doing with that Indian chief? Oh, they're just becoming blood brothers. Brian, always the intellectual, explains how the ritual creates a deep symbolic bond between the two. And if you remember the last episode, Stewie wants to be as close to Brian as possible. The two complete the pact in the kitchen, now connected by blood. Good thing dogs are hygienic, right? Hey, are you blood brothers with Meg because you ate her tampon out of the trash? No, that's something else. The next morning, Stewie wakes up with a disgusting surprise, a herpy sore on his lip. He immediately accuses Brian of being the source. Brian, of course, denies this, but a closer inspection of his skin reveals he is riddled with the infection. Oh my God, look at you. You're more herpes than dog. Not only that, but Brian knew this before going through with the Blood Brothers ritual. Brian tries to downplay the severity of this gross, lifelong disease, writing it off as not that big a deal. I don't know, Brian. They may have to put you down for this one. Stewie does his best to hide it at school with a beard, but that only works for so long before his classmates and teacher run off screaming. As Stewie breaks the news to his teddy bear, Rupert, Chris slides his way into the conversation. How long have you been there? Long enough to know you have herpes and do weird stuff with your teddy bear. Chris reveals he has herpes too and also received it from Brian by doing a blood brother ritual with him. The brothers decide to team up and enact glorious revenge on Brian for being so careless. This involves them grabbing a table next to Brian on his date and heckling him about not disclosing his condition. This manages to scare his date off, but the fun is just beginning. Stewie and Chris continue with their revenge plot, hacking Brian's Facebook, changing his relationship status, and changing his profile picture to an actual picture of herpes. Brian begs for this to end, so Chris agrees to stop if he lets him drive his Prius down the block and back. Seems like a fair deal. That's way past the end of the block. Yeah, his room's empty. I don't think he's coming back. Stewie isn't so quick to forgive, claiming that Brian violated the sanctity of his trust by knowingly giving him herpes. Brian apologizes, saying he was too embarrassed to admit he had herpes, and promises to never lie to Stewie again. Sure, he has a gross disease for the rest of his life, but I'm sorry is probably fine. The disturbing subject matter in this episode obviously turned a lot of people off from it, while also portraying Brian in a pretty negative light that isn't exactly easy to move past by the end. With disgusting imagery and an infuriating character arc, it was a controversial episode, but still not as controversial as Brian stopping Christianity from existing was in Faith No More. During Trip to the Vet, Brian flirts with the cute vet tech, finding out she's single because not many guys want a girl who smells like dog pee and whose car is covered in dog hair. Sounds like an angel sent from heaven for Brian. But turns out she's pretty serious about the whole angels and heaven thing. Yeah, I'm an evangelical Christian. Is that a problem? Normally it would be, but Brian is always ready to throw his beliefs out the window for a date. The two attend a Christian concert together, and things seem to be going well, especially when she suggests going back to her place and getting a little crazy. We'll eat sherbet and watch funny State Farm commercials. Dang, she's a freak. Brian was hoping they could do something more in the adult variety, but this makes her angrily call the date off. Angrily returning home, Brian denounces Christianity as the source of all the world's problems, deciding to write his own How the Dog Stole Religion story. Brian takes Stewie's time machine back to 30 AD Bethlehem to stop Jesus from becoming the Messiah. Brian manages to track Jesus down and attempts to one-up his miracles, whether by bringing suitors to a wedding or talking to people from a much higher mountain. Jesus admits that he only does all this preaching because God makes him. And what Jesus really wants to do is be a stand-up comedian, but doesn't have the confidence to try. Brian convinces him to give it a shot, but this means Jesus will need to have a conversation with the big man upstairs. Needless to say, God does not take kindly to his savior of mankind pivoting to a comedian career. You will never do stand-up comedy. I forbid it. Wait, what's that sound? With the power of a sappy father and son song, Brian gets the two to reconcile and let Jesus give stand-up a chance. Jesus does his first set in Rome, which seems to be a bit of a hit. It looks like Jesus may have found his calling, but he still ends up on the cross regardless. With their mission complete, Brian and Stewie return to the present to see what's changed. Because Christianity never happened, Judaism became the dominant religion, changing the way people dress, interact, and live. Joe is even able to walk. Brian, of course, can't be satisfied with anything. Looking to make a world without religion, Brian sends Stewie into the past to stop Moses from receiving the 10 Commandments. Done. How'd you do that so fast? I gave Moses $20 to walk away. They succeeded in creating what appears to be a perfect world, but before they can go out to enjoy it, they're visited by a certain someone they may have put out a job. What did you do, you little tups? Oh my God. Fix it, fix it, fix it. God demands that Brian and Stewie change things back to the way they were. But Brian refuses, claiming that having no religion has created a better world. But after some persuasion from God, they're forced to reset everything. Family Guy has never been one to shy away from dunking on religion. But this episode's mean-spirited approach to the topic definitely rubbed people the wrong way. The problem was less with what it said and more with how it said it. But at least that episode had something to say, unlike our next episode, A Statch from the Past, which has been referred to by fans as one of the most pointless episodes of the entire series. While slouching around at home, Peter catches an ad starring Tom Selleck for reverse home mortgages. I know, exciting start to an episode. The commercial promotes the benefits of reverse mortgages, promising to give you more spending money. Daydreaming about a $600 Mr. Potato Head he saw at the flea market earlier, Peter quickly signs himself up. Oh my God, is it the expensive Mr. Potato Head from the flea markets? I told you we couldn't afford that. Peter explains how the reverse mortgage has given him a ton of free money, but Lois begs Peter to call the bank and reverse the deal, fearing they could lose their house. Peter starts to worry about the bank taking his house, wishing he had never been duped by Tom Selleck. That name perks the ears of a nearby Mayor Wild West, who tells the story about how he and Tom used to be in a band together, but broke up when Tom started taking 2 vitamins a day instead of 1 inch. Why I never. He can't do this to people. I'm going to track him down and get the money back. Setting up with Mayor West, the pair make their journey to New York to find Tom Selleck and get Peter's house back. The duo stops to eat at an ESPN zone, where they notice a trail of black hair, dye leading out the door. Mayor West believes that if they follow this trail, they'll find Tom Selleck. The trail comes to a dead end, but Peter knows a clue that might help them. Wait. Only one guy would accept delivery of so many Hawaiian shirts. They do find their way to Selleck's home, but when he sees them waiting outside, he calls the NYPD to have him arrested for trespassing. Despite being thrown in a jail cell, Mayor West is able to get them out thanks to some very persuasive whispering. Posing as extras on Tom Selleck's show Blue Bloods, Peter confronts him on the scummy nature of reverse mortgages. It's not a trick. Overrule. What are you? You're an actor. Wild West tells Tom that he broke the mustache code by using the great power of his facial hair to trick others into losing their homes. In a last-ditch effort to speak to his heart, Mayor West busts out the guitar and gets Tom to join in on a duet. This gets Tom to apologize to Peter and cut him a check to make up for his troubles. The fact that this episode revolved around things like Tom Selleck and reverse mortgages, something the average viewer either doesn't know or doesn't care about, cements this as a dud of an episode. Not gross or shocking, just boring. But Peter at least the plot upped when he tried to marry his own son in Fresh Air. Chris approaches Peter with the hopes of spending some quality time with his dad. Peter, being the Father of the Year candidate that he is, immediately blows him off, even walking back the promise he made to Chris. But you promised we'd go fishing. Ah, Chris, I was just lying to you so you'd go away. Brian tries to tell Peter that hanging out with his son could be good for him, but Peter doesn't see what he would get out of it, so he doesn't want to hear it. Later on, Lois receives a call from her mother saying that her father, Carter, recently broke his leg at the mall. How do you even do that? I'm a champ at doing this. Ow, you jinxed me. Damn it. With his wife out of town and no one in the family willing or able, Carter has no one to look after him while he heals. So Lois decides to ask Chris, who's angrily moping in his room after his dad rejecting him. She promises Chris that his dad loves him. He just has a hard time expressing his emotions. Lois encourages Chris to look after his grandpa, and since he's still seeking a father figure, he agrees. He gets to Carter's mansion to find his grandfather bedridden and annoyed with not being able to do anything. And the worst part about it is I can't have sex. God, I wish there was a way I could just do it myself. I hate to even say this, but you came to the right teenage boy. Carter, cool. Hey, next time I want to try it with my hand. Once Carter is fully healed, he thanks Chris for spending time with him and even tries to pay him for his service. Come on, you don't have to do that. I just like getting to spend time with my grandpa. Shocked by Chris's selflessness, he decides to make a big announcement to the rest of the family. I have decided to change my will and name my grandson, Chris, the sole heir to the Pewterschmidt fortune. The family is obviously shocked, with Peter perhaps being the angriest about being left out of millions of dollars. To counteract this, Peter decides to start being extra nice to Chris and spend more time with him, doing normal things a dad should do. Peter runs himself rag, trying to get close to Chris, but still hasn't found a way to secure himself in the will. When Joe mentions that whoever Chris marries will be very lucky, Peter has one of his stupidest ideas ever. Peter asks Chris to marry him so he can get access to Chris's fortune. Seeing this as a chance to hang out with his dad, Chris agrees, and the two head off to Vermont to do the deed. Before they can go through with it, the family manages to crash the wedding in the nick of time. To their shock, Chris admits he knows why Peter is doing this, but agrees to marry him anyway because all he wants is to spend time with his dad, and if being married means I get to spend even more time with my dad, then it's worth it. This makes Peter see the error of his ways, finally accepting Chris for who he is rather than his ties to the money. A touching ending, but the fact that the episode so jokingly played around with the idea of father-son relations really got under people's skin. Inbreeding is a touchy topic, and audiences didn't find even the implication of it to be in good taste. But good taste went out the window when the show killed one of its main characters seemingly for good, landing it as the second worst ranked episode after Life of Brian. A trip gone wrong that nearly kills him and Brian again. Stewie decides to dismantle his time machine, so I've decided to get rid of it before something irreparable happens. Kinda seems like something you keep around in case something irreparable happens, but that probably won't happen, especially in this episode. The deed is done, with Stewie dumping the remains of his time machine at the dump. Brian can't help but feel emotional. This is like the end of an era. Oh, sack up, you twink, it's just a machine. Before they leave, they take notice of all the things people throw away, including a perfectly fine street hockey net. Brian suggests they take it home and have a nice, non-deadly afternoon of playing in the street. The two begin to set up, grateful for a perfect day between two best friends. Let's not kid ourselves, you already know what happens next. Brian, look out. Unfortunately, there's nothing that the vets can do about his injuries, so the Griffins say their goodbyes to their beloved dog. You've given me a wonderful life. I love you all. Now, that's the end of an era. However, this moment did not sit well with a lot of people, and we'll get into why it was so controversial in just a moment. Stewie is, of course, saddened over the passing of his dog. If only he had some sort of machine that could turn back time. A time machine, if you will. Wait a minute, that's it. I've just got to rebuild the time machine, and then I can go back and save Brian. Unfortunately, Stewie is unable to get the tech he needs to do this, and must tearfully say goodbye to his best friend. At least, that's what we thought at the time. Looking to move on, the Griffins visit a pet shop to find a new dog, and wouldn't you know it, they just so happen to have a talking dog there too. The dog, named Vinny, is brought back to the house where he begins winning over members of the Griffin family. Peter feels as though Vinny has already become part of the family, but Stewie isn't so sure. He and Vinny certainly don't seem to get along like he did with Brian, especially when Stewie insults Peter. Things seem to mellow out when Vinny hears Stewie crying outside, with Stewie expressing his disappointment in how fast the rest of the family has moved on for Brian. Everyone in this family is so damn thrilled with you. They've forgotten all about Brian. Well, I'm not thrilled. The pain of Brian's death hurts now, but Vinny assures him that everything will be okay. Vinny knows this firsthand, as his previous owner died before the Griffins adopted him. The two reach an understanding, but ultimately their friendship will be short-lived since they bring Brian back 2 episodes later. This episode received outcry from fans for not only killing off many of their favorite characters, but for also handling his death in a way that felt cheap and pointless. The ratings grab felt so manipulative, and it's easy to see why it's considered one of the worst Family Guy episodes, but still not as bad as You Can't Handle the Booth, which sits at a whopping 4.2 out of 10 on IMDb, given that the plot was nothing but the Griffins providing DVD commentary over a fourth wall-breaking, confusing episode. In a totally meta move, the characters of Family Guy sit down to do commentary on a fake episode, as if they were actors on a show. Confused? Just you wait. It gets more confusing. Okay, welcome to Family Guy DVD commentary for episode 1614. The story of the episode is pretty much an afterthought, as the family continuously talks over pivotal moments and yells at each other for no good reason. This is why we need a Sharpie here to put our names on our water. This is all part of the gag, but whether or not it's actually funny is up to you. Throughout the entire episode, we constantly miss out on what's happening in the commentated episode, even making us miss the setup for a cutaway. Nice going, Meg. You talked over the setup of this cutaway, and now we don't know what's going on. We even miss out on fully enjoying a demonic Jesus attack because of bickering over Peter making more than Lois per paycheck. The frustrations between Peter and Lois eventually come to a head, with Lois calling it quits on the commentary. Her and Peter's marriage and her job with Family Guy. This marriage is over. Enjoy spending the rest of your life alone, and enjoy doing the show without me, cause I quit. Peter tries to leave to talk to her, but before he can, Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane comes in to settle things down.